Senator Cramer.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. Thank you, Mr. Goffman, for being here. And I'm going to try to avoid asking you a question that would require you to abstain based on the Supreme Court situation, which I think is prudent of you. So I'm going to avoid that. But I do want to still explore a little bit that experience, because it is one of the, I think the biggest concern most North Dakotans have is that the same group that promoted the Clean Power Plan are back. And in the middle of that, there's a stay of that Clean Power Plan, and of course the case that you discussed earlier with Senator Capito. But would you say that the utilities and the public utility commissioners supported the Clean Power Plan because it provided some certainty? Because we hear a lot about certainty. Was that an argument at the time? Do you recall?
I remember discussions at the time about the Clean Power Plan, and Senator, we went far out of our way to really engage with a lot of key players, including the utility regulators.
So I was one at the time.
Sorry?
I was a state utility regulator at the time, and there was some engagement. And one of the concerns, at least in North Dakota, and one of the concerns we have, frankly, going forward, is that you might recall that the proposed rule said that North Dakota could, reduce emissions by 11%. And because of that proposed rule and that low number, the principle of not having authority over in 111D and inside the fence line, all the things that Senator Capito talked about, they were willing to sort of waive that principle, accept it, even though they didn't believe it was legal. Because 11% was doable, and we'll all work with you to get that done. And then, of course, as you know, the final rule was 45%, which resulted in an arbitrary and capricious successful argument. How is it that you went from this bait and switch, this 11% to 45%? Do you recall how that happened without?
Senator, we certainly weren't intending to do a bait and switch. We were. I think I would argue, had three key ideas in mind. One, we thought that we were operating entirely within our legal authority. Two, we thought that we were setting standards that were entirely achievable. Mm-hmm. But we were also, and this third part was equally important, we thought we had offered the utility sector, the electricity sector, broad flexibility in achieving, say, on a multi-state or regional basis, the overall standard.
Well, the 45% reduction, maybe you thought it was believable, it would have been very painful, probably not possible, actually. And even now, when we talk about load shedding as a means of reducing CO2 emissions, and by the way, I'm working with several Democratic members of this committee and other committees on trying to find ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, realistic ways that don't destroy the economy. But we see this load shedding as another, coming up again, I guess. And of course, we have the North American Reliability Corporation sounding the alarm. So, North Dakota has two system operators, MISO and SPP, depending on which utility you have. But I want to get back to something you said to Senator Capito. You said in terms of options. So in talking about the Supreme Court case, the West Virginia versus EPA case, and I think it's prudent that you are talking about potential options depending on the outcome. There's no point in waiting forever. But you said you're engaged in, to use your term, extensive outreach to stakeholders. You listed utilities, system operators, public utility commissions, other, I think you called them co-regulators. If I was to call, say, the three public service commissioners in North Dakota, Commissioners Chrisman, Fedorchak, and Haugen-Hoffert, or Dave Glatt at DEQ, would they confirm that you've engaged in extensive outreach in drafting these options?
Well, thank you for giving me those names, because I was going to ask you who I should be talking to or who we should be talking to, and now I have the answer. Yeah. I believe, at least in terms of my discussions, they have not, but we have met with members of the National Association of Regulated Utility Commissions, NARUC, and we are planning, after the Supreme Court's case comes down, to do another round of outreach and engagement.
Well, I appreciate that. And I would, NARUC's great. I was a member of NARUC, and there's a lot we have in common, but there's a lot we don't. And frankly, even Senator Lummis's point that the West is not the same as the East. I mean, North Dakota is one of 4 states who has never violated their ambient air quality standards. 4 states in the lower 48, never. We think we do it pretty well. We like our primacy. We think we don't want federal mediocrity imposed upon us. And so we take great exception when the federal government overreaches its boundaries with us. Those are the names. I can get you more, but I would encourage you to do that, because at the end of the day, to me, as a former state regulator and just as a, I think pretty common sense American, the thing that's missing, frankly, in our federal government these days is federalism. It's foundational to the success of our country, and we have empowered the administrative state to the point where now we're in court all the time. Let's just trust the good states of our country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cramer. And I think Senator Kelly's next, followed by Senator Sullivan. Thank you. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.